Staying in contact. I'm London Mitchell. Each week, we take a few minutes to examine an issue in our community and introduce individuals working to address those issues. Admittedly, sometimes we get into the weeds, but hopefully, you'll leave each installment with some food for thought and maybe the inspiration to roll up your own sleeves and join an effort. My guest today is Peggy Daly-Masternak, the coordinator of the group opposing the proposed widening of I-475 through West Toledo. This is a story we've been following, and when we last chatted with Peggy, I thought their opposition had shoved the project to the back burner, but apparently not.
If I left that impression, I apologize, because it has been, it was never that we felt we had won the war. Maybe a skirmish, but we had, not won the war. My hope is that as is happening, the list is growing. There was just an appeal put out on a listserv that I participate in nationally for evidence that resolutions by city councils and county commissions are being passed now around the country to say the harm that you will do to our community if you just keep expanding highways cannot be offset by the costs that we will have to absorb to deal with the trickle downs, that come from that. And the list is growing and growing. So last night, for example, to prepare a particular piece, I was able to capture about maybe 10 or 12 very recent. I'm not talking anything more than like 2-3 years ago, where city councils are, passing resolutions, unanimous resolutions for the most part. Almost every one of them was a unanimous resolution by a city council or county commissioners to say, no, we oppose this. And when that happens, you then have the combined strength of political will combined with local activism, and that does make the differences.
Let's take a step back and explain to those who are listening who may not have heard our earlier discussions just what it is we're talking about, this expansion or widening of I-475.
In 2020, the Ohio Department of Transportation first put out the idea that they were going to widen the highway. The length of I-475 in West Toledo goes from 75 to US 23. They've already widened the portion between 75 and Douglas Road, but from Douglas Road all the way out to US 23, which, by the way, is the densest residential area in the entire beltway around Toledo. The plan is to widen it from the existing 4 lanes to 6 lanes for the entire length, but in the segment between Secor Road and Talmadge Road, they want to widen it to 8 lanes. They're going to use a word and just try to get people to be dissuaded or interested in, what they call auxiliary lanes. They are still lanes. They still have traffic on them. They still have pollution coming off that traffic. They still have noise coming off that traffic. They use them to connect one interchange to the next interchange. And that's their plan for the segment between Secor and Talmadge. So in that area, it will double the width of the existing highway as it exists right now.
And your contention is that we really don't need this wide interstate or expressway through that area, correct?
Proven by their own data and the data from the Federal Highway Administration. So from the beginning, they have cited 2 studies that were done. One was done in 2002, one was done in 2007. Both of those, just for context, precede the invention of the iPhone. So everybody now, can't even, many people have come completely to of age as adults in those time periods, and think about all the changes that have happened in those times. So those 2 studies had them call for a purpose and need statement. They are required by the federal government to produce a purpose and need statement. Their statements are that the highway is congested and that it is unsafe. However, the Federal Highway Administration publishes a massive database for freight mobility. And I have dug into that massive database and find that they give years from, right now it's currently, they're showing from 2017 to 2022. In 2022, and there are about 11 to 12,000 in any given year bottlenecks for freight that are cited by the Federal Highway Administration around the country, nationally. And in 2022, this segment of highway was, depending, it was eastbound and westbound, between 7,500 and 8,600 in the rankings out of 11,000. The average delay, according to the Federal Highway Administration, on that segment was about a minute to a minute 0.2. Compare that to the most congested, consistently ranked #1 highway in the country is the Cross Bronx Parkway, also known as I-95. I'm sorry, Cross Bronx Expressway. It's not a parkway, expressway. I-95 in New York City. It ranks #1 year after year, and the rank for it, or I'm sorry, the delay for it is about 47 minutes. So, and the other point to make here is comparing the data from 2017 to the data of 2022, we've actually improved our ranking. We've gone from the 5,000s into the 7,000s and 8,000s in a rank, in a list that's ranked up to 11 to 12,000. So we have actually lost delay time or improved on our delay time in that 5-year span. The other piece that is constantly cited in their purpose and need is safety. And they constantly say there's been 2 fatalities and 4 serious injuries. And I'm sorry for those people that went through that, lost people or have incapacitating injuries. However, when ODOT's own consultants studied 3 different alternatives for widening the highway, they saw that the only thing that would be decreased would be fender benders. In their analytics, they have massive data analytically looking at what is going to be the consequence of this widening type, this widening type, or this widening type. And in all cases, all 3 cases of widening, both incapacitating injuries and fatalities went up to 29%. When you widen the highway. So to claim that it's going to get safer, frankly, it challenges common sense, because you bring more cars, you bring wider lanes, you then wind up with people weaving in and out, trying to go faster and faster. The other piece about the safety is the context of those crashes that occurred that took somebody's life or caused an incapacitating injury. They do not mention that in both fatalities, neither person was wearing a seatbelt. They don't mention that for some of the serious injuries, alcohol was involved, or a motorcycle, or these types of crashes often involve young drivers or high rates of speed, or any of those things that will not be mitigated by a highway widening. None of that can be addressed by adding yet another lane. So, you need to, the devil is truly in the details on this one. When you start drilling down and counter their arguments with things, it defies common sense. It defies their own data.
I'm London Mitchell, and we are staying in contact. My guest is Peggy Daly-Masternak, who is leading the grassroots opposition to the widening of I-475 through West Toledo. Peggy, there is no doubt that you have gained ODOT's attention, but how do you bridge the gap between you two? And are there any positive signs?
You know what? I'm gonna give them props right now for a very small amount of effort. It really won't do what needs to be done, but at least they have tried 2020 to 2024. in looking at a trend that is called complete streets. So they have taken several of the bridges. This is based on their material that was handed out earlier this week at their open house, not a public meeting where people could all be heard at the same time, a stroll through and look at pictures on the wall and talk one-on-one with some consultant or some ODOT staffer. And when you look at it, you see that on Rushland and Bowen and Talmadge and Monroe Street, perhaps, I'm trying to remember, they are trying to apply what is known as complete streets. Complete streets means the street shouldn't just be for vehicle traffic. A complete street should be for a walker, a biker, somebody who wants to get from here to there, who can't afford a car. And frankly, many people, young people especially, can no longer afford a vehicle. What they would pay for a car today, I paid for my first house. The insurance, the gasoline, the upkeep, all of that makes it almost impossible. So they want to have bikeability. They want to have walkability. They want to have public transit, improve public transit. And so the complete streets theory is we're going to make these streets more this way. They have added some wider walking paths on those 3 bridges that I've just named. They maybe put a little bit of greenery there, okay, to make it a little bit more of a pleasant walk.
Peggy, you've been studying how ODOT makes decisions and how it prioritizes its budget.
ODOT has a budget, 24 and 25 biennium. Their budget is $11.5 billion. Of that $11.5 billion, ODOT earmarks 1.1% for public transit and 0.3% for rail. So my contention with ODOT is they seem to be single-minded in the idea that we just are about building highways, expanding highways, laying down new highways. We are not about looking at a bigger, broader picture in today's context of what people really, really, truly need. And I don't think we need any more opportunity to be a car-centric community. We can't afford it. We can't afford the health costs. We can't afford the climate costs. We can't afford the money that's being laid down for this. That's another piece, London, is that in 1 year's period of time, the increase in the cost for this highway is now up 22%. They're up, the last time it was quoted was that I have written documentation for, quote, showing the cost summary estimate, it was 176 million. It's now up to 217.5 million. And that doesn't include property acquisition, and it doesn't include the design costs that have already been expended. So the cost of it to taxpayers in a tough economy right now, that's what the whole election, or part of the reasons for the last election, we're in a tough economy. This is unnecessary. Their own data disproves it. We don't need the climate impacts. We don't need the health impacts. We don't need any of that. We have to really, 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 truly rethink what we do with the limited amount of resource that we have to make it better for everybody, not just for people who want to jump in a car and frankly, cut their commute time. That's what this is about. That, and it's a trucking route for people who will stay in Toledo for about 2 minutes on their truck route from Canada all the way to parts west of here. That's what this is about. And I realize the need for commerce. Commerce is very important. Yes, I purchase things much less than I used to, but yes, I still need groceries. I still need clothing. But at what cost? At what point do we start to say, wait a minute, it's pretty imbalanced?
We're talking with Peggy Daly-Masternak, coordinator of the neighborhood grassroots effort opposing the widening of I-475 through West Toledo. Her email address is i.475group@gmail.com. That's i.475group@gmail.com. I'm London Mitchell, hoping you'll accept this invitation to Join us again next week as we continue staying in contact.
Previous episodes of Staying in Contact with London Mitchell are available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Podbean, the Suite 419 app, and londonmitchell.news.